Just had to change my, yeah, that's fine. So something with the headphone jack I had.
All right.
My headphones plugged into. Okay, so it's recording now. So I'll just, I'll count down and we'll jump into it again.
Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, welcome to another interview. Today, I think this is going to be a fun one. Today we have David Sims on. Now, David, there he is. He's gone through kind of what we're hoping a lot of the rest of us will go through this training. He started a break fix business, Carolina Computer Concepts. He grew that into an MSP. And then he started focusing on a particular niche. In his case, it was HIPAA compliance and the medical field and that sort of thing. And he took that focus and he's built it into not only a focus for his MSP business, but he's also taken it and started training other folks around HIPAA with his membership site called HIPAA for MSPs, as well as his podcast, Help Me with HIPAA. And so these are a lot of great examples of what you can do once you narrow in on a niche and become an expert on it. You can start looking into these other types of channels, whether it's podcasting or membership sites or anything else, and use those not only to market yourself but to also build other side businesses. So we're going to explore all of that with David today. How you doing, David?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Excellent. Very good. Very good. So, let's start off just kind of talking a little bit about when you decided that you wanted to focus in on a niche like HIPAA. You take us back to when you were starting to grow your Carolina Computer Concepts business, and at what point you felt like you wanted to start focusing in on something.
Okay. To not give you too much background, I'll say that I did what probably a lot of people go through is I was coming out of that point in my life where I was kind of getting sick and tired of IT work. And I decided that I wanted to go back into it a little, you're laughing. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So I had a handful of clients, but I had really stopped doing IT work. I wasn't trying to grow the business. I was kind of just trying to make a little bit of money. And at some point, well, actually, I had a full-time job doing something else because that's kind of how I was so sick of IT work. I didn't even want to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So I had literally walked away from it other than keeping a few clients so that, I had some good extra money coming in. So basically, I worked my way backwards. Most people start small, doing it from home, and then they get, go full-time. I did that. I had the storefront and all that. And then I went back the other direction because I burned myself out. And so at some point I decided, what, corporate America is just not where I want to be. I don't make a good employee. So I decided to go back into the IT work, but I knew that I didn't want to go back into it the way I had been doing it, which was break fix. And so I started going toward the managed services platform and going into that. And then quickly I realized that in order for me to stand out from all the other managed services or IT providers, that I really needed to niche down. I was watching tons of entrepreneurial videos and podcasts and all this stuff, and I kept hearing things like the riches are in the niches, or
I love it.
Yeah, stuff like that. So I'd hear that, and I'd say, you know what? If I were to walk into a business today, now not today, but back then, if I were to walk into a business and somebody said, "What makes you different from the guy down the road?" I would have to stare at them and go, "Me? I'm the only thing that's different, really. I mean, they're doing the same thing I'm doing, and I can't say I'm better than them, like some people do, because you really don't know. And quite honestly, somebody could be better than me at IT. And so there's no differentiator there. There was nothing I could walk in the door and say, the reason why you should hire me is because I'm, the best at this, or I have this and somebody else doesn't, or I focus on this." And it was all kind of subjective stuff. I don't really buy into the "I'm better than the guy next door" thing, because you really don't know that. And if you walk in the door trying to sell that piece, that's kind of hard. So I knew that I wanted to niche down. And so I started looking at what were some niches I could get into. So I looked at medical or healthcare, and I looked at legal. I looked at financial. I dabbled a little bit in the financial and and I actually went and did some speaking at an engagement for a bunch of accountants and all that. But it seemed like with the advent of HIPAA changing their rules in 2013, that should be something that was new for IT, because we've never had to really deal with it the way it was before. So I really wanted to kind of get into that before it started becoming big. And so that's kind of what drove me to the healthcare market and getting into HIPAA compliance, and then rolling that into my IT business so that I could walk into the door. And then I could say, the reason you should hire me is because I understand your business better than any other IT person in this area. And in some cases, in many cases, I understand HIPAA compliance better than the people that I'm actually walking in the door. And of course, if you understand the problem better than the people you're selling it to, then they're going to automatically assume that you have the answer and you have the solution. And so the selling points are easier.
HIPAA equals big money. I mean, that's what sets you apart from the guy down the street. Is you're going to come in and probably have a higher rate because you're knowledgeable in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have higher rates. However, I will say that doesn't come without higher costs.
Yeah,
insurance is a lot higher. Risks are a lot higher. So yes, I do charge those people more money. And as a matter of fact, I tend to be about 50% higher than the average MSP on that. Now, if a client came to me that was not in the healthcare industry, then the rates would be quote unquote normal or lower. But yeah, I do charge for that because there is a lot of risk involved. There's a lot of costs involved. So that's the reason for it.
Oh, it makes sense.
Were you hesitant to start niching your business? Because I know the concern of some folks is that by narrowing their focus, they're going to lose out on other opportunities, and they might not be able to find enough work to fill enough of their business focusing so narrow on a specific thing. Was that a worry of yours, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, it was. But what I started finding is that because HIPAA compliance deals primarily with privacy and security, I started realizing that other businesses were looking for the same thing. They didn't have to do anything with compliance, but they wanted that same level of privacy and security focus. Mm-hmm. So I actually started having more people contact me outside of healthcare that wanted that same level of care and support. I mean, back in December even, I picked up a nonprofit. And during the interview with the board of directors, they told me the reason why we hired you is because you focus on HIPAA compliance, which means by default, this is their words, by default, you understand privacy and security better than anybody else. So that's why we want you.
Winner.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't ask me any questions about privacy and security. It was just one of those, guilty by association, I guess, things.
Right. Yeah, and that's something I find also. Even when you narrow in on a niche, you learn skills that can help you, with not necessarily things in that particular niche. Like for me, with WordPress, learning WordPress development and all of that also helps me understand things like SEO, web page optimization, sales funnels when it comes to websites. So I'm learning all of these other ancillary things that have to do with websites just because I'm focusing in on websites and not, it doesn't necessarily have to be WordPress. So you can build some good skills, whether rather than focusing on just IT in general. You're trying to learn just a little bit of everything, and to really focus your knowledge.
Yeah, and you can. I'm sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and that's the same thing that runs with my world, is that I know about 9 applications that work with Outlook, and I'm an expert in those 9 apps. So when people look at my website, they're like, oh, this is a perfect example. Yesterday, I had a client send me a PDF of my whole sales page that he printed, and he had everything circled and checked, that he was like seeing the winning equation, iCloud, Gmail, Outlook. And it was really kind of cool to see, because that's what the sales page is for, the niche things that other people have been failing with. I know Outlook plus the 9 apps. It's a value add for experts, I think, to know what is included in what you do.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point too. Like we're talking about niching. One thing that you can do is not necessarily niche down to a particular customer, but niche down to a particular skill set, which may be more of what Lisa did.
Yeah.
So you're taking, like you said, Matt, you learn about all these ancillary things. You could take just a portion of those ancillary things that you're learning, which is part of what I did on some other things we may get to in the topic and discussion. I'm not sure, but you learn something so well that you can go out and just sell that one thing to anybody. And it doesn't have to be, you're not necessarily selling to a particular niche, you're selling a particular product or service.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So in your focusing on this niche, it seems like you found a need for other MSPs and IT service providers who are out there who might be interested in providing these same types of services. And because you kind of learned through your own process how to get into this particular niche, you decided to start a membership site called HIPAA for MSPs. So if you could kind of go into what drove you to start that and your experiences getting that off the ground.
Okay. So what I had done is I had went out and learned enough about HIPAA to kind of talk the talk and walk the walk, and found some training, which was not easy to find. And once I got all that, and I kind of had my abilities to do the compliance, and it wasn't full-fledged. When I talk about compliance, it's not like I'm going into a medical office and doing all of their HIPAA compliance. I'm not. I'm staying really focused on what I can do and keep it within IT, but I'm also bringing in other people that do handle the full-fledged compliance stuff, and I put them under my same umbrella of services, even though I'm not the one doing the work, so I outsource. But what I was seeing is once I got to where I could legally address healthcare entities, because I had my HIPAA compliance done in-house. Once I found that out, I kind of got stuck. Like, okay, I got this new knowledge, and I got this new tool set and skill set, but I don't really know what to do with it. I'd walk in the door. It's funny because I was kind of thought that I would walk into the door to a medical office and say, hey, we're a HIPAA compliant IT company. As a matter of fact, there's no other HIPAA compliant IT companies in this town, so I'm sure you want to do business with us, right? and most of the time, they would look at you and say, yeah, I'm not interested, And I was like, wow, I can't believe that, because legally they're supposed to do business only with a business associate or an IT provider who also has their HIPAA compliance done. So I really thought this was going to be an easy sell when I walked in the door, and I found out it wasn't. And so I started running into a lot of these challenges. And then at the same time, I was in these forums, IT forums, and HIPAA started kind of catching traction within the IT community, 2013, 2014-ish. And so I started seeing people asking a lot of questions, MSPs and IT providers asking a lot of questions. And so I was answering them, what you do in forums, you help other people, right? So as I'm answering these questions, I'm answering the same questions over and over and over and over again. And so one day I was like, you know what? I'm sick of answering these questions. Let me just go out and Google a resource. And that way I can just say, hey, if you need to know something about HIPAA and you're an IT guy, then here's your resource right here. And there wasn't one. I Googled it. And believe it or not, Google did not give me anything back.
You got done Googled.
Yeah. So there was nothing. So I was like, wow. I can either take that one of two ways. Either it's not there because it's not a good idea, or it's not there because it is a really good idea and it just hadn't
done it.
Hadn't come to play yet. So I decided to take that leap, and spent several months digging into what I needed to do to create a membership site, and bounce some ideas back and forth off some people and a few IT industry leaders, and kind of talk to them about whether they thought it was a good idea. And eventually just kind of went to that platform. And the membership platform is for IT providers and MSPs to teach them how to become HIPAA compliant, and then turn around and develop a compliance as a service offering that they can turn around and then increase the revenue in their business.
Yeah, your website is very cool. I gotta say I'm quite jealous, and I'm just going all the way down it, and I'm like, I want a site like that for my stuff. you know, David. What's interesting is you kind of like me and you have the same path. It was like when we were out on forums, I started writing the ebooks, and instead of having a forum like you had, I sold ebooks, and that really is how my community of techs kind of circled around my stuff. And I've had, now I have my podcast and my YouTube and all that, but I found a niche that other techs just needed to learn from another tech. Mm-hmm. And, you're like, hey, I can give out forum advice for free for years, or hey, come over here and pay me. And then you get to be involved in the community. Yeah. So it's a very good idea.
Well, with the membership site, the thing that I like best about it is it's not just, hey, pay me so you can, get access to the information, but it's because they're paying you that you're able to then take that funds and do a lot more with it. So they're able to get a lot more than what you could do without that, because I'm able to bring in people that are charging $400 and $500 an hour for consults, and they're talking to a small group of people, and you wouldn't have access to these people unless you were paying them $500 an hour. Right. So it's a lot cheaper on members that way. And plus they get access to the information, they get training courses, coaching calls. There's just a ton that you're able to do and give to them that's far beyond a forum.
So
that's a way to make it twice.
Right.
You count twice. Yep.
I know an issue with membership sites can be retention and keeping folks in there because they're paying monthly for access to this information. Right. So not only do you have to have a lot of information there for them when they sign up, but then you have to keep some kind of recurring thing going, whether it's like coaching calls or webinars or whatever. So what are some of your tips if folks listening want to maybe look into starting a membership site around their niche? What are some ways of keeping folks in that?
I would say don't start with a membership site. That was tough. It's one of those things where it's a good idea, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of it going, wow, this was not a good idea.
David, I've tried that too, and it really was. I just did a small forum on my Remote Rockstar site, and I was already like, I just can't handle it. It really takes a lot of work and management.
Mm-hmm. It does. But it is a lot of work, and that's one of the things that, when you start digging into membership sites, a lot of people make it sound like, you just throw it out there, build it and they'll come. And then, you build it, you put it out there, they'll come, and you can spend 2 hours a month working on this thing, and it's just going to make you tons of money. No, it's a lot of work. And it's not to say that you can't get to a point to where you're making really good money and you're well known, but the path to get there is long and arduous, and you put a ton of work into it to get to that point. But and typically only thing people see is where you're at when you're starting to get notoriety, and they think it was the easy path, and it's not. But if you want to start a membership site,
after all that, if
you still want to do it, after I try to talk you out of it, there's actually a lot of ways to do it now that I didn't have available to me when I started. So membership platforms now, there seems to be new ones coming out fairly frequently. Mm-hmm. So it's not that difficult to get one started. The difficult part really is keeping it going, keeping content in there and all that. So you really have to understand your audience, what it is you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. But there's tons of resources now that wasn't available when I was doing it. Now there are actually membership sites for membership site owners. So it's
funny.
Yeah, I'm like, man, I wish I'd had that, because I can't tell you how much money I threw away buying the wrong things, going in the wrong direction. It's crazy. I mean, the day I launched my website, my membership platform did not have an SSL certificate that was working, and so people were like, "I'm not giving you my credit card information because it's an unsecured platform." So I had that to deal with, and fortunately the people that were starting up with me, they gave me a lot of grace and they understood it was a new platform, and of course I rewarded people for sticking through those times. And I'm very real with people. I don't try to come off as, somebody who's, way up here or whatever. I mean, I'm not that far ahead of most other people. And that's what I tell them. Look, just, come along with me on this journey. I'm not that far ahead of you. So come on, you can catch up.
Yeah, I think, and that's fine. And I think that's a big lesson for folks who are hesitant to put themselves out there as an quote unquote expert or something in a particular niche, because they feel like they don't know enough or to teach other people. But really, as long as you know more than the people who are coming to get your information, that's really all that matters. And I think you can go on a journey with your followers. So you don't necessarily need to be an expert. You can say, hey, I'm learning all of this stuff in this niche. Come along with me and we'll learn together and we'll help each other out. We'll create a community around it. And as long as you're the leader of that community, you're seen as the expert, even though you might not know any more than the next guy about that particular niche.
Yeah. Well, you've heard of just-in-time learning, right?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I do just-in-time teaching.
Right.
So, you learn something, new, and then you immediately turn around while it's fresh in your mind, and you record a course on it or a podcast or whatever, and that way you're able to turn around and teach it really quick while it's still fresh in your mind. So, there's always something there to deliver value. It's just a matter of bringing that on a constant.
I think I think the best teachers are those who have just learned that particular topic, because if you're an expert and you've been doing it for a long time, you don't understand the beginner's mindset. You don't understand how to explain it to someone who's never done it before, because you've done it for a long time. As if you're a beginner yourself, you know the struggles you went through to learn that particular topic, and you can teach it to someone who hasn't started learning it yet pretty easily. Yeah,
that's the curse of knowledge, as they call it. So it's like, since we're talking to IT people here, it's almost like if somebody were to ask you to do a video course on, I don't know, pick something.
Microsoft Outlook.
Yeah.
Bad idea. I've tried that.
But, you could do something even as, even like setting up, I don't know, how to type up a Google Docs, document. I mean, for somebody like us three, and even everybody that's watching, that's something that is like, why would anybody want to learn that? But there are tons of people out there that have no earthly idea how to even get started in Google Docs. And so, you can teach people that, but it's hard. Sometimes so much about IT that you don't realize how many people don't know anything about IT. I'm telling one of my clients, but just this morning I had a client call and they said, I can't get into this encrypted email that somebody forwarded to me. And so I started laughing. I was like, if somebody sent somebody else a secure email, they're not able to forward it to you. That's what makes it secure, because nobody else can get into the email. Which was kind of funny, but I mean, people don't understand that. They don't understand how that security works. So it was a teachable moment for me. Of course, the client was like, well, that was kind of stupid. But, it's a teachable moment to kind of show them how security works. And at the same time, reiterate to them that security is not convenient. And everything I do around security, unfortunately, puts a lot of inconvenience in place for people, because you know what? Oh gosh, you got to put a password in. Yeah, it's going to take me 2 seconds.
Ooh, it's going to take me extra time.
But yeah.
Cool. So let's jump into podcasting, because that's probably something that's a little bit easier for folks to get started with, and it's something all three of us do. So what have your experiences been with your podcast called Help Me with HIPAA? Is that something that you're using to market your MSP services, or is that more kind of a funnel to your membership stuff, or how are you approaching that podcast?
That's a great question. So the podcast is me and a co-host. And the co-host is an actual compliance person, whereas I'm an IT person. So it's a pretty good match, because we're doing completely different things. So the podcast is able to touch on several different communities. You're talking about niches. There are people that listen to the podcast that are healthcare providers, and then there are people who are IT providers. And so it's kind of a way for us to kind of bring them together. because one of the things I want to do with HIPAA for MSPs is the membership site is take the people that are IT providers and people who are healthcare providers and try to find a way to bridge them together.
Right.
And so that's kind of one aspect of what the podcast does, is it reminds people that are healthcare providers, what should you be looking for in an IT person so that you make sure you're hiring the right person. But we also talk a ton of stuff about, what's going on in the industry and breaches and compliance stuff. And quite honestly, it's a extremely entertaining podcast. You wouldn't think that compliance would be entertaining,
Right.
but we make it very entertaining. That's kind of my job.
Nice.
Donna, co-host, Donna brings all the knowledge. I bring all the jokes and wisecracks. So
I think that's important. Yeah. Above anything, a podcast should be entertaining, because people are going to keep them listening. They're going to want to, have a reason to come back to it. And that should be because it's fun to listen to and they enjoy, spending the time listening to it.
Yeah. So, but we use that as a way to bring some members in. It was started out really as a way for us to use it so that we could grow the, I guess, so that we could reach out to the niche on both sides and build ourselves as a market expert and a niche expert in that. And so that's kind of what it started out as. And then as things have gone, because we've been doing it now, I think 2 weeks ago was a year. So we now have 54 published episodes, and we're starting to get a lot more traction and a lot more downloads and a lot more interaction from people who are saying, hey, the podcast was great. How do I hire you to do IT work? Or how do I hire you to do compliance?
Right.
So now those things are starting to happen. And we're starting to get people that are calling, that are vendors, and saying, hey, can I advertise on your podcast? And of course, that's a touchy thing. Do you really want to do that? Because you don't want to look at just the money. Hey, we can make some money bringing in an advertiser, which because then you start diluting your podcast a little bit when you do that. So we're getting traction with it, and it's bringing in a little bit of revenue, and more importantly, it's a way for us to establish ourselves as an industry leader.
Exactly.
Yeah, one thing I've learned about podcasting is, if you're going to do a podcast show, there has to be a value for you and for your listeners. And to me, there's a lot of guys out there doing podcasts just for fun and don't generate money and stuff. And I was like, I want to market to people to hire me. That's what it really is all about for me. It's a marketing vessel of something I do. I enjoy it, but there's no popularity in it for me. I don't think, isn't
that what, capitalism is I'm providing service and you're, giving me something back in return. So definitely nothing wrong with that.
The most amazing thing I think about podcasting is that literally anybody can do it. I mean, you hear that all the time, but honestly, for less than $100, you can start a podcast. Or you can be like me, and I went out and bought all this junk I didn't need, mixing boards and all kind of stuff. Those things are great, don't get me wrong, but you don't have to have that. That's kind of the way I am with everything. I go out here and get all this stuff, then eventually I say, God, wait, I really didn't need all that stuff to start. But you can honestly get started for almost no money, and people, when they hear your podcast, especially people that are your customers, I mean, it's like they think you're a rock star, you're a radio personality or something like that. It's crazy. I've met people at conferences and they walk up to you and it's like, man, I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity. I'm like, dude, I'm just a guy sitting in a bedroom somewhere with a microphone that's recording something. It's not.
I'm a talker. That's what I say. I just like talking.
Yeah, but it's just funny. But that's one amazing thing about it, is that you can create that yourself with, just a little bit of time, effort, and a few dollars.
Yeah. And you mentioned this, you've been doing this a year, you have 50 some odd episodes, and you're just now kind of starting to get momentum and get people engaged. And that's something that not a lot of people realize with podcasting is they put out, a couple episodes and they expect to get a wave of listeners and all these people, emailing them and stuff. And it is something that takes a while to build up. You have to have patience. And that's where the pod fading comes in, is where people, go through all this effort to get this podcast out, and then they don't get the kind of return on it right away that they're expecting. When really, as you can see, it can take up to a year to really kind of build up the momentum.
Yeah. Well, I'll say with podcasting, I mean, there are very few anomalies in the podcasting world where they jumped out there and then all of a sudden, boom, they're making tons of money.
There were probably some sort of well-known person beforehand.
Yeah, I mean,
I have to agree. I've seen that happen, and then they become super cool, and then they have this. Oh my God, I have like a lot of downloads, and now I'm like super cool. Can't be that way. That won't last.
No, it won't. And for most people, if you're looking at that, first of all, if you start a podcast with money in mind, you'll almost fail every time because you're not going to see that right off the bat. And I had somebody ask me not long ago, you've got a membership site and you've got a podcast and, you've got video stuff and webinars and all this stuff. What is your secret sauce? And I look at him, I have to laugh. And I'm like, the secret sauce is just not stopping. It's just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. Don't worry about when you don't see anything, in 3 months or 6 months. You got to keep going because you may be 6 months into a podcast and you may only have 10 people that are listening on a regular basis, but that doesn't mean you don't keep going. And, eventually it does catch on, but it just depends on, who you're niching to, who you're putting out your content to. It may be something where you're trying to put content out to tens of thousands of people, or maybe just a few hundred. I mean, when you're talking about my niche, where it's HIPAA compliance for IT, there's not a ton of people out there that are going to be interested in that. So I know that I'm not going to probably ever have 10 or 20,000 listeners on my podcast or even in my membership site. I'm just not. And
I think the key is to have just quality listeners and quality followers, people who are going to be interested in your stuff. Is better having a few of those than hundreds of people who don't do anything. They just maybe listen and then go about their day. So it's definitely quality over quantity where that's concerned.
Right.
You know what? It could catch up, though. I switched up my hosting companies right before the beginning of the year. And I was doing a podcast last night, and I just realized that I have almost 12,000 downloads since January.
Nice.
And you know what? I brought over all my old shows, so they sometimes went to the feeds, and people got them on their podcatchers. But you still got to use that number, 12,000. It's somewhere on someone's device, whether they listened or not. It's a download. So to me, I was like, I took over my own show and marketing. Now I'll talk about that later with me and Matt, but basically, I have control over it in the marketing, and I do a lot more now, I think, and that's why the word starts to spread, like you were saying, and don't worry about it in the beginning because you don't know what you're going to get. I remember watching it in January going, 12 downloads. 13.
Yeah. Numbers, I tell you, watching the numbers game would drive you crazy. I remember when I first started my membership site, I would sit at the dashboard of WordPress and wait for the thing to pop up and go, one visitor, 2 visitors. And I'd be like, ecstatic, 3 visitors, like, oh my God, I got 3 people on my website.
Yeah.
Watching
it's exciting, but then it doesn't. I'll just say quickly, I had a video on YouTube go viral, in my words, viral. I put it out one day, and I realized I had too much personal information in it. Like you can see my banking info and stuff. But I had 40 downloads that day, and I had 80 the next day. I was like, holy crap, get that down, remake it. And I made the new one, and it has 18,000 views now in like just a few months.
Nice.
But you can't tell, though, what's going to hit, what's not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And again, who knows if those viewers are actually interested in the topic, or maybe there's some keyword in there that
it's the topic because it's a hot Microsoft item. So no one else YouTubed it before me. I was the first one.
Right.
So that's the
saying, like the number isn't everything. It's the quality of the people and the mindset of the people that are going to be watching it or listening to your podcast that matter. So even if it's a low number, if those few people who are watching it are very interested and will be willing to spend money on it, then it might not be a bad thing after all.
Yeah. We have a whole webinar on content and SEO and all that stuff, I think. So.
We'll be digging into all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that'll be yapping about that.
Anytime you get into content marketing, though, I mean, if you can do it where you can repurpose your content over and over again, then it's so much easier. to deal with. You can do a video and then turn that video into a podcast, and turn that podcast into a written blog form. So, that's the best way to do it, where you can take one piece of content and create multiple forms of other content that you can push out.
Oh yeah, that's what me and Matt are doing for this video. Is we're making a podcast series along with it.
Yep.
Right. So it's just like you can get the audio or you can get the video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
smart.
The beauty of the internet and content is it's really easy to take it and turn it into other stuff. Cool. So I think we're going to wrap it up. I know, there's a lot of other stuff we talked about with you're doing like a whole webinar thing, business, and spinning that off. And I think what I'd like to do is bring you back, save that for another video, and bring you back and kind of deep dive into that. So we'll save that for next time. I think we've kind of touched on a lot of stuff already and a lot of stuff to chew on. So we'll let folks chew on that for a while.
David, you have a lot of information, man. You could probably be on a show for hours.
Yeah.
That's what I told Matt. I was like, we're going to be talking for about 3 hours today if you want to cover all that stuff.
Right.
Oh, it's okay.
So we'll tease folks with a return of David to talk more.
The Lisa, David, and Matt show.
There you go.
All right.
Bring me in.
Yeah, that's right. Well, podcasters usually all can get along pretty good because we know how to talk to people.
And we can talk.
I found that. Me and Matt get along great on these. So.
Yeah. And if you want to listen to something really funny, just go take all three of go back to the very first podcast of all three of us. And I guarantee you
how far we've come. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's hilarious.
Mine was horrible. I was in a huge room with a really crappy headset with Steve from Podnuts trying to interview me. I didn't know I was live. So it's live. It was hilarious.
It's funny. So, David, where can folks find out more about your different projects?
Oh, let's see here. I'm all over the internet.
Yeah.
You can go to HIPAA for MSPs.com for the membership site. CarolinaComputer.net is my IT company. Let's see here. What else do I have? Podcast, Help Me With HIPAA. You can go to helpmewithhipaa.com, or you can look at it on iTunes, also there. I see we're not talking about the other stuff yet, so I won't give that out.
Yeah, just we don't want to overwhelm people.
Yeah, so
keep it out a little bit.
I've been on a couple of Matt's shows, so you can listen to those. There's some great information in there if you're interested in more information about those things.
Yep.
Oh, definitely.
Cool. Anything else for him, Lisa?
No, I think that, it was all this stuff for me. The HIPAA stuff is I'm just starting to learn about FINRA.
Oh yeah.
The financial stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of, I'm going to talk about it in the webinar a little bit, but that's my next thing of expert work is doing the email and compliance and all that. And it's the next step for me. And it's a lot of, so I'm taking your cues here that it's a lot to learn to get to the next step to say to a client, okay, I'm now a compliance expert in email versus your tech down the street who's not, Yeah, so I had a lot of learning from my sales rep yesterday of things I need to do. A lot of good takeaways for this year, I think I'm calling it. Things to expand on HIPAA. I don't think I ever deal with that much, though. But it was all good information.
Yeah, that shows you can. There's no limit to how far you can niche. Like you niched the Outlook, and now you're going to try to niche down to Outlook compliance, and then who knows? There might be a niche of CPAs who focus on compliance with Outlook and
spam listing, blacklisting. There's so many things I can funnel out to that I just realized in the past year that I don't even know where I'm going to be next year. Because it's like endless roads, Yep. And your show today, David, really, I think, opened my eyes to a lot of things I never even thought of. Not that I'm going to get into it, but it's cool to hear. I liked it.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I think I was talking to Matt before we started recording, and one of the problems that I have, and probably a lot of entrepreneurs have, is chasing that next shiny object, the shiny thing that you see. You're like, oh, I can do this. I can go this direction, or I can make money doing this. And so it's, and that's probably why I ended up in so many different things at one time. But
well, I think the key for me is I don't think about how can I make money, because money really doesn't excite me as much as what can I learn next. I think a lot of entrepreneurs think that way, is we don't think about the money as much as I like that. I want to go be the best at that, or I want to do that because no one else is, and inspire and create and do the stuff that takes it takes you to that level. And there's just right now, I just was telling Matt in the last show, there's just so many things that are expanding right now. It's a good time for tech.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And one thing that I do in my business, and this is kind of one of the other big differentiators, if you just put HIPAA aside and all that, one thing I've found that's been super successful is walking into a business, and when they hire you, you dive into their business to understand what it is they do, and learn it to a point where you can not only talk about it, but you can find ways to help them in their business that even goes beyond IT. I've had times where I've walked in the door and said, hey, how much are you paying for credit card processing? Because they're complaining about cutting costs. I'm like, what are you paying for credit card processing? And they'll tell me, and I'm like, I think I have a guy that can get that for you, cheaper. And so I put them on to somebody else. Or, what are you paying for phone service? Maybe I can get you in with a voice over IP company and they can lower your cost. But when you start taking care of your companies and your clients like that, you become way more than an IT person to them, and you become somebody that they turn to and start really asking business questions and what can they do better? How can they market their business? If you start doing podcasting or videos or whatever, they may ask you, or you may hear them say something like, hey, I've really thought about doing a podcast, and I know you have one. Well, guess what? You might be able to get paid to be a consultant or to help them get that started. And
valued resource.
Yeah. So, everything you learn is a marketable resource. Everything you learn is a marketable resource.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's good closing words.
No word. No kidding.
Is good. A good marketable resource. That's the theme of this show.
Oh, it was good stuff. Thanks, David.
Yep, sure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
See you next time.